Astronauts to the moon.
Ignition sequence start. 3, 2, 1.
Houston, we have a problem.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue.
What you're seeing here is a mirage.
What's going on, everyone? It's Jaron from Jeranism back with another live video for you today. It's Thursday. That means it's time for another interview or presentation-style show, presentation-style live stream. And today, well, actually, I think what we're going to do, we're going to change the topic. It's going to be Joe Biden, why he makes the best choice for president, and how he should babysit your young daughters. No, we won't do that. We'll do something different. We'll stick to part 2 of Landucci's Amsterdam presentation on the electric universe. So sit back, I don't know, grab a healthy snack, maybe some sliced cucumber or apple, and let's enjoy the perfect English of my guest joining me from the land of the upside down, Landucci. Hola mi amigo, ¿cómo estás?
Hello, how you doing?
¿Qué ondas?
You know, I'm very happy because you recognize my perfect English. So,
of course.
Yeah, it was time. It is time to recognize that, man. So thank you for the recognition.
It's about time you got there. Yeah, I admit it now.
Yeah.
We also have joining us the great Bob Nodal from Globebusters. What's up, Bob?
What's happening? Hello, guys.
Bob is in a
very enthusiastic, Bob.
He's very happy to be here.
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely. By the way, Jaron,
yes,
that video that I posted up earlier about the that I got off Facebook about the guy with the cable with the box that was supposedly putting his PC board circuits on the 5G,
right,
that said COV19 on it. I did a little further investigation on that and found that what that actually was a old cable TV set-top box that somebody had bothered to press the COV19 in. And also COV means coaxial video is another abbreviation for it. But so I pulled it down off Facebook, told everybody that it was a fraud. And so I'm just letting you know, and anybody out there, that if they see that video, it is a fraud. Don't sweat it. I'm not saying that they're not going to do something like that, but that particular video is BS.
All right, good to know. It was a little bit strange. I was like, I don't know if they would necessarily just print it right on the hardware. But yeah, good to know that it's nothing we need to worry about. And yes, for those looking to talk about all the latest and greatest with the Rona nonsense, we will do that tomorrow on the lounge. And then a good thing, Bob, is that on Sunday we're going to be doing another little 5G talk, correct?
That would be correct.
Awesome. So yeah, definitely tune in for Globebusters. We should be able to go live. That's the rumor, based on what Iru said, based on what Karen Bees said, based on what numerous people have said. That is the plan. And if anything changes from that, well, you'll probably find us on either my channel.
Did you hear about Donald Trump today? I believe was talking about that they're gonna use the militaries to.
Yep.
Okay.
Roll out the
the vaccines.
Well, that's what we've been saying from day one. And yeah, Trump is not a good guy. He's just not.
No. And also some kind of nice news for me, at least, because there is a paper, a newspaper that occurs it's print in Switzerland, and it's in German, of course. How is the name of the paper
newspaper?
Yeah, Express.
Oh.
Well,
newspaper.
It's a very important piece of nice propaganda, anti-New World Order propaganda, that it's print in Switzerland. And the guys who are behind that, they are very well-known guys in Germany and Switzerland and those countries. And they are following us because in their Telegram group, which has 20K subscribers, they put the tiny video that when I present the old radio interview with Donald Trump, saying that he never give himself a flu shot, and they extract that and they post in the Telegram group. So that means that they are following exactly you, Jaron. And
all right,
you know,
sweet.
Yeah, nice because the paper, for example, some of the I believe was like 3 months ago, they print out the moon landing hoax. They talk about flat Earth. They are not considering themselves like a flat earther, but they talk about it and have a respect opinion about the topic. And well, nothing. I mean, I just bring the maybe tomorrow we can elaborate a little more.
Sounds great. Yeah, that should be good. And I wanted to bring up one other thing, if I can here. Veritas Radio. Bring this up for everybody. It's good to know that people are listening to us all over the place. And if you want something to do in 5 hours at 7:15 p.m., let me bring this up. David Weiss and I were recently on Veritas Radio with Mel Fabregas, which is one of my favorite shows. And so, yeah, this show is David Weiss and Jaron Campanella, Freedom, Fear, and Flattening the Curve with Truth. So we had a nice 2-hour conversation. I believe he only posts the first hour, and then you have to subscribe to Veritas Radio to get hour 2. But if you're looking for something to do at 7:15 p.m. today, that's Pacific time, so 5 hours from now. No, 6 hours from now. Go ahead and check that out. That's on the channel, and I'll put a link. Veritas TV is actually the station or the channel. So check that out tonight. All right. Iru, you want to see if your share screen is working and we should be ready to go?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, I do have one question for Iru really quick. Iru, when you got your strike, how long did it actually last before they said that you could stream again? Because I just looked at my channel manager and it still says I can't stream.
Well, they never told me you are able to stream again. I discovered that for my own, because I 1 week later, around 7-8 days later, I just, trying to upload a video, and it allowed me to upload a video. So I start thinking, well, if maybe if they allow me to upload a video, I can maybe stream live. And when I press the button go live, it start working again. So I assume I assume at least there is like 7 or 10 days of penalty before they give you back the control of the. If this, in the case of we are talking about the same type of strikes.
Yeah, it was just a copyright strike, and I think Bob, you said that the strike day was it the 8th or the 10th? Do you remember? I thought you told me.
It was, I believe, the Thursday, whatever that was. Yeah. But here's the thing. So I appealed it to YouTube, and I've now gotten 2 responses from them, and it's so crazy because Jaron, I sent you the notice what they sent to me, right. And it said point blank in the YouTube notice that I had 7 days to respond, or they would take the video down and strike the channel. Well, they didn't give me any time to respond, and they just took it down and struck the channel. So I wrote them an email, sending them their own copy of what they said back to them. And then they write back to me and they say, well, deleting the video doesn't do any good. You actually have to contact it. I'm like, guys, that isn't what I said. You guys didn't give me my 7 days to respond. You simply took it down, and then they did it again. Same thing. Well, deleting the video, and then I'm like, I wrote him back again. I'm like, is there anybody even real on the other end of this? It's like it's just an automated response, but it's signed by a person's name. So they're really torquing me off.
And I take it that the guy that struck us never responded to the email?
Yeah, and he's never responded to the email either, the guy that took it down.
No, so. and in my case, it's the same thing. For example, I was sent the appeal on 9th of April, and nobody answered me. We are on 14th of May, and nobody answered me, nothing.
Yeah, well, I've been answered twice, but both times it's been just a bullshit answer. So, what do you do?
Yeah, it's usually just copy-paste or automatic responses. I never get anything that seems to be real or anything, but so hopefully we are on the Globebusters channel. If not, check both the D Live of my D Live, Globebusters D Live, and we can at least be there if need be. Iru, your screen is on. You have the universe and Dr. Einstein, correct?
Exactly. Yeah, okay. I have that slice because just for some type of reminder, we are going to enter into the discussion or the proposition of trying to, talks about what they call physical reality, which is a magnetic field and electrical field. They're trying to implement this idea, these realities, in terms of gravitational fields. Of course, nobody ever detect that or isolate to say, okay, this phenomena happen or this condition happen only and only because we have a gravitational field. Mm-hmm. So we talked a little bit about, and like I said before in the first presentation, in the first part, it's going to be like a little mix between my ideas, my research, my kind of connect dot in terms of movement in the sky, what could be possible, what it is, what we see in the sky, or maybe what is driving its movement or behavior, because when we look up into the sky, we just theorize. Nobody goes there and ever, test nothing about that. We extrapolate ideas that we can test here on the ground and maybe assume that, could be happen into the universe or into the sky, this type of behaviors based on electric and magnetic fields. So what I'm trying to show in this very short video is that in terms of proven if there is a possibility to orbit an object based on electrical and magnetic fields, this is a very, very homemade type of experiment or observation in terms of the orbital things, but it's possible. Mm-hmm. I don't say that this is the case in our model, a planetary model, but at least you can show and you can start, just play a game in terms of extrapolate this into more biggest or scalar sizes up in the sky. Right. And the first part, it's just about talking about the analemma, this idea, because we showed that before, but apparently when you go up into the so-called space, the sky become like an ice type of temperature, right? I mean, it's almost 0 Kelvin, at least from the Go Fast Rocket company that they show in the video called Up Aerospace. They show almost 0 Kelvin. So I don't have any. I don't trust the idea that there exists this thermosphere, with 2,000 degrees up there. I believe more high you go, more cold becomes. And when you start, applying the theory behind what happened when you trying to reach really, really lower temperatures, the molecules or these tiny particles concepts start to behave strangely and start losing friction and start losing refraction index, and a lot of crazy things happen in that state of when you're trying to reach the absolute 0 Kelvin. So the idea of this part of the presentation is that a lot of explanation that we can present in terms of what's going on up there, it's based on the assumption, it's an assumption of this condition of lower temperatures. Because at least in our, real daily basis science, anytime you want to achieve this 0 friction state, you need to go into those temperatures and use electricity and use magnetism.
All right. Ira, let me say something really quick. Yes. I want people to understand that what Ira is pointing out here is the electric universe interpretation of the mainstream heliocentric model. In other words, what he's showing here when he shows like the little piece flying around the sphere there, this right here, Essentially, what that is supposed to be showing is that, orbital properties of an object around another object. But again, this is in the heliocentric type of model. Now, in the flat Earth universe, I certainly don't believe that this is the way it works at all. In fact, I think that in the flat Earth, model of the universe, what we would be seeing with those lights in the sky, again, are energetic points of a matrix. So, it's not to be confused. I think the two models shouldn't be confused with each other. But, what we are trying to point out here is that the electric universe model of the heliocentric universe is much more viable than the gravitational model put forth by mainstream science.
And you showed it before, Bob, too, with the knitting needle.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, let me just reopen because I have, like I said before, I'm reinstall my Microsoft Windows, so we can have a little bit of crashes along the presentation. But yes, of course, Bob, I totally agree. I mean, we don't know exactly what these things that we see up in the sky really are. In terms of, could be point of light, like you say, in a matrix, type of model. But at the same time, at least for me, it confused me the idea that you can see defined images or features in so-called planets, and they are stable, they don't change, and it's very confusing. That is my opinion. I am not. Nobody goes there to check it, but maybe if you talk about stars, well, that I assume could be more the model you talk about it. But in terms of the so-called celestial spheres, I don't really have a conclusive opinion on what these celestial bodies really are.
Bob, this might be dumb of me, and I'll just ask it because it seems to make sense to me that the higher we went, the colder things would get, because obviously we know that the sun is heating the atmosphere is heaviest at the ground level. We know as you start going up, you lose atmosphere, so it gets colder. Now, at a certain point that we can't really go to, they say, oh no, the temperature starts coming back up. What is the reason that, what is being heated at that height that is supposed to cause it to go back up?
That's really a good question. I've thought about that a lot myself. I think that maybe there is something that is being trapped up there, either by some sort of charge that is holding it up there, or maybe even an inversion layer of some sorts, like in the standard weather model. But it is interesting, and we've noticed this on like our balloon flights. Dwayne Kellum sees it on his balloon flights, where they will go up to, and I don't remember the exact altitude what it was, but you go up to a specific altitude and the temperature starts rising and rising and rising. So this could also be something that maybe it's getting up there towards, if you want to accept the idea that there's a firmament, and the idea that heat rises, maybe enough of the heat is getting up there where it's actually being registered at some point. I mean, I don't know. I'm just completely spitballing here.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, interesting stuff. But I agree with Iru as far as the Go Fast rocket and other things have seemed to show that once you get up much higher than what our balloons are going, that it does get extremely cold again. But go ahead, Iru. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay. In fact, I mean, every experiment that you conduct with stratospheric balloons is going to reach no more than 50 kilometers. And apparently, if you follow the thermometer in the Go Fast rocket, no Go Fast, it's called Up Aerospace, because the Go Fast was another. It's from the same company, but it's another project. Mm-hmm. So this Up Aerospace rocket, if you see the thermometer, it's it's equivalent to Quindel. I never pronounce well the name of the stratospheric balloon from Kellum, because at that height, 30 kilometers, 40 kilometers, the temperature is that. The problem becomes when you go higher more than 100 kilometers. And of course, with a stratospheric balloon, you cannot reach that altitude. And the official sounding rocket coming from NASA or for Sweden space company or the German space company, those companies, they never show the metrics and, the temperature or things like that. They just show, very, very briefly the video. They cut the video, they edit the video when they enter in this so-called microgravity condition. And so they don't show nothing about that. And it's strange even that this Up Aerospace company showed that, and let me just, because maybe it's going to be more organized if I present that video first and then we go back, because I believe it's going to be better for the people that have in mind. This is the video that we have been talking about. It was launched on 6th of November of 2015. It's just a regular type of GoPro video, but with the nice thing was they put this
gauges,
measurement.
or whatever you want to call them.
Exactly. The airspeed, the altitude, and the outside, not the inside, the outside air temperature based on Fahrenheit. At least that is what it said. And if you go into the web and trying to find this video, you're going to find it because it's uploaded into the official YouTube channel from this company. And if this is true, they reach this temperature at almost 120 kilometers, and that temperature is almost 0 Kelvin degrees. I don't know how they measure.
That's crazy. If it got anywhere close to that, you would think that everything would just not even work at that point.
Yeah, but
who knows?
Maybe, but maybe things never work in certain conditions based on standard atmospheric pressure. And this is in another. This is my opinion, of course. But what happened up there is completely different that maybe what happened here inside or at lower temperature, lower heights. In our plane of existence, if you want to see in that way, because up there, who knows really what the conditions really are? Because when I see so many experiments conducted via sounding rocket, that tells me that the space agency, they are trying still to understand what happened up there.
Right, exactly.
So, of course, there could be, a less amount of people that they are on track about what's going on up there. But the rest, we are just buying fairy tales, about what is up there, really.
And what is that altitude at right there? It's about 400,000 feet is what it says? Is that what I'm getting?
Yes, yes, it's around 120 kilometers. 120 kilometers. So the thing is, when you reach this type of or kind of state, you achieve, for example, superfluidity. So let me just again play, because it's going to be related with the things that we want to talk about the electric universe. So let me just.
There were more surprises. In the 1930s,
can you hear it?
Yeah.
Okay.
At even lower temperatures. This rapidly evaporating liquid helium cools until at 2 degrees above absolute zero, a dramatic transformation takes place.
So that is the first thing, a dramatic transformation occurs. Everything starts to lose or transform the standard properties. You lose the index of refraction, you lose friction, you start having special conditions.
Suddenly, you see that the bubbling stops and that the surface of the liquid helium is completely still. The temperature is actually being lowered even further now, but nothing particular is happening. Well, this is really one of the great phenomenon in 20th century physics.
The liquid helium had turned into a superfluid, which displays some really odd properties.
Here I have a beaker with an unglazed ceramic bottom of ultrafine porosity.
Ordinarily, this container with tiny pores can hold liquid helium. But the moment the helium turns superfluid, it leaks through.
That's amazing.
We call this kind of flow a superflow.
Superfluid helium can do things we might have believed impossible. It appears to defy gravity. A thin film can climb walls and escape its container. This is because a superfluid has zero viscosity. It can even produce a frictionless fountain, one that never stops flowing. Superfluidity and superconductivity were baffling concepts for scientists. New radical theories were needed to explain them.
And that is everything. I mean, I know that the volume is a little low, but we need a radical new theories to explain it. So, you know, it's something that is quite remarkable what happened on those conditions. And in fact, we talk about this in Globebuster show, but this idea of the Bose-Einstein conditions of this kind of, you know, trying to explain this phenomena, which is the idea. Let me just play again, because there you have.
Isn't the Bose-Einstein condensate? Isn't that when everything collapses into its position from superposition into its actual physical property?
Yes, I'm going to play this tiny clip to explain supposedly what's going on in terms of loose identity. You know, and it's very philosophical thing, saying that the particle lose identity. What it means, lose identity? They don't know what temperature they have, or the position they have, or the gender they are. You know, it's like we treat the particle as a person that lose identity. You know, I mean, they don't know what they are. They are a particle. They are waves. They are black, white, red. That is very generic thing. But what is remarkable is that we are in 2020. And they don't have any idea what happened up there. And in those conditions, they have like a really basic idea.
Such a condensate.
Let me very quickly, sorry for this thing, but I believe the sound of the, I can't fix the sound problem with the sounds here, because it's low right now, or is
yeah,
better?
it's a little low.
It's a little low.
It's a little low. Okay, let me just
You cool the gas,
maybe.
it becomes a liquid. If you cool the liquid, it becomes a solid. But under certain circumstances, if you cool
Just
atoms
max it out everywhere.
at extremely low temperatures, they undergo
Let me
very
just.
strange
I know there is
transformation.
a little.
They undergo an identity crisis.
Because maybe, sorry for this, because maybe Skype it's taking, you know, taking the
Audio. Did you click?
the control of the audio, you know, and that
Gotcha.
is completely.
It's not too bad. It's still doable.
Okay. I'm gonna. Sorry for that. I'm going to play again, and I'm gonna leave like this.
Okay.
States, atoms at high temperature always form gases. If you cool the gas, it becomes a liquid. If you cool the liquid, it becomes a solid. But under certain circumstances, if you cool atoms far enough to extremely low temperatures, they undergo a very strange transformation. They undergo an identity crisis.
Identity crisis. If you keep lower down the temperature, it go to identity crisis.
So
Maybe he's saying it's changing states of matter or something.
Yes, well, something like that, because we are still trying to create new theories to explain that phenomenon. The phenomenon occurs, but maybe we don't have exactly the language to explain it. You know.
by an identity crisis. When you go to low temperatures, the quantum mechanical properties of the atom become important. These are very strange, very unfamiliar to us. But in fact, each one of these atoms starts to display wave-like properties. So instead of points like that, you have little wave packets like that moving around. It's really difficult for me to explain just why that is, but that's the way it is. Now, as you go to very low temperatures, the size of these packets gets longer and longer and longer. And then suddenly, if you get them cold enough, they start overlapping. And when they overlap, the system behaves not like individual particles, but particles which have lost their identity. They all think they're everywhere. This little wave packet over here can't tell whether it's this one or that one or that one or that one or that one or there, and it's there, and it's there. They're all in one great big quantum state. They're all overlapping. They're all doing the same thing. And what they're doing, to a good approximation, is they're simply sitting at rest. This Bose-Einstein condensate is very difficult to imagine or to visualize. I can imagine what it's like to be an atom running around gaily, freely, bouncing into things, sometimes going fast, sometimes going slow. But on the Bose condensate, I'm everywhere at once. I've lost my identity. I don't know who I am anymore. I'm at rest, and all the other atoms around at rest, but they're not other atoms around. We're all just one great big quantum system. There's nothing else like that in physics, and certainly not in human experience. So just to think about this causes me wonder and confusion.
So, you know, the thing is, again, I'm going to repeat, but the thing is that when you reach these lower temperatures, you have a special type of properties of the fluid dynamics, and maybe the electrical or the magnetism that also occurs there. This is my interpretation based, you know, even the modern science can really explain what happened, and we don't have access, you know, like control access to those environments. Everything that we're trying to prove is a very local in terms of a very, very small size, you know, very tiny experiments here on lab. And when they send sounding rockets, it's also like the same thing. There are very small piece of metal with equipment inside, with experiments inside, trying to, you know, prove things up there, and you don't have so much things to compare. What is, again, something we have in mind is that we have lower temperatures up there, and everything, you know, the magic happen in lower temperatures with electricity and with magnetism. And I'm going to play this tiny clip from it's an old video, old in terms of this is about 2016 or 13, something like that. But again, every time they want to play with electricity or magnetism, they go to lower temperatures.
For a brief moment, is called quantum levitation and quantum locking. And the object that was levitating here is called a superconductor. Superconductivity is a quantum state of the matter, and it occurs only below a certain critical temperature. So a superconductor is defined by two properties. The first is zero electrical resistance, and the second is the expulsion of magnetic field from the interior of the superconductor. Inside a superconductor, there are no collisions, so there is no energy dissipation. It's quite remarkable. Think about it. In classical physics, there is always some friction, some energy loss, but not here, because it is a quantum effect. But that's not all, because superconductors don't like magnetic field. The combination of both effects, the expulsion of magnetic field and zero electrical resistance, is exactly a superconductor. And let me show you how this works. I have here a superconductor, and when I place it on top of a regular magnet, it just stays locked in mid-air. Now, this is not just levitation. It's not just repulsion. I can rearrange the fluxons and it will be locked in this new configuration, like this, or move it slightly to the right or to the left. Now, of course, I can turn it upside down and it will remain locked. For example, I can make a large circular rail here. It moves freely. And again, that's not all. I can adjust its position like this and rotate, and it freely moves in this new position. And I can even try a new thing.
And he's going to put it, upside down and do the same thing. Of course, we see this type of experiment in the past, and maybe now it's very common thing. But again, I'm going to repeat the same thing. They need this state of lower temperatures to have no frictions, to don't lose energy, to achieve even the orientation locking, like we see on the moon, for example, that always face with the same, face to us. And the only place where, at least, based on standard science and standard experiments, is possible, is up there, and in the playground that we call space. Of course, we have a lot of those. Then we can maybe return here to show how the rockets behave in that so-called microgravity, which is clearly more than they transfer from one state of matter to the other, because in fact, tell me.
I was just saying, what's really strange about this, Zero? It's like it appears that when you get down to those temperatures that are closer to absolute zero, that entropy seems to become not applicable anymore, and that is absolutely astounding. And of course, if that's true, then we can certainly see how things, up in that range, up in that temperature range, whether they're objects or whether they're energetic points. But if they're operating in a completely lossless environment, that makes almost anything possible, which is really mind-boggling. That's amazing.
Completely agree, man. I mean, they are trying to, I don't know what to say in terms of, because I am not a physicist, and like I say at the beginning of the show, I'm trying to present here, things that I call my attention and trying to connect dots, with my own experience, which is not so vast. But when I'm start looking in this, for example, this behavior of the rockets, once they reach 120 kilometers, they enter in this type of I don't call identity crisis. I call this orientation crisis, because they lose the orientation. They don't know where they are. The rocket start tumbling, upside down, like moving, like when you, for example, drop some type of a rock, for example, a flat rock into a swimming pool, and based on the frictions, or start to tumbling from one side to the other. But when the rocks go out of that water, stabilize, things maybe I explain a little bit confused, but this is what happened to the rocket. They are like in this floating state, and suddenly they reorient. They enter into a new state. It's dropping water, which is something remarkable. Up there, 120 kilometers, we have this type of raining water, and then the rocket orientate itself again and start, in the free falling to the sky. So it's like they lose, in that state, they lose their own identity in terms maybe of orientation, because this is not the only rocket that happened. Before that I showed these 4 different rockets: the Go Fast, the NASA rocket called Foxy, the Matthews 5, the Rocksat from Sweden company, they are all turning crazy once they get out of that state. And remember that in the heliocentric model, they need to assume that the space is empty, because otherwise you're going to have friction with something.
Yeah, I agree.
You're going to have loose energy and, all that kind of stuff that maybe they don't want to you even think about it. And I'm going to finish this part because maybe it's going to be better. But remember that for regular science, for official science, one of the most abounded gases up in the atmosphere is the sulfur hexafluoride, which is a colorless, odorless, non-toxic, non-flammable. So that's maybe it's why you cannot turn on a rocket engine based on standard fuel up in the so-called space. Not because it's empty, but because it's filled with this type of gases, which are not allowed electricity and not allow flames. Then this is 6 times heavier than the standard air that we breathe under standard atmospheric pressures. And they talks about that, for example, every time a volcano make eruptions, it injected the atmosphere with hundreds of thousands of tons of this gas and stay there like 3,000 years. That is what they say. This is mainstream official data. I am not assuming nothing. Sorry, because it's in Spanish, but if you search in English, you're going to find the same thing. Even it's in Wikipedia, all the characteristics, but it's bad science. Bad science is a gas with a long useful life, 3,200 years. And it's like 20,000 times more, in terms of the CO2 conditions.
Wow.
Well, this gas is 20,000 times more.
Now that's something that would certainly seem to heat up with the sun.
Yes,
especially being
exactly.
A lot thicker than air. Yeah,
and in fact they fill this container with that gas to just play a little bit with the hexafluoride, and they drop this tinfoil type of boat, and when they drop it, you can see the movement is like being a liquid. But because this gas it's colorless, and it's they don't have even index of refraction, so it's invisible to our naked eyes. You cannot detect it. It's like being nothing up there, or in this case, inside these containers. So the guys start filling this tinfoil type of boat. Is going to sink because it's more heavier than the air. Then they take it and they drop it into the candles, the flame candles. You can see the gradient for shooting down the candles. So that it's telling you that it's some kind of liquid that goes down, hit the first candle, and start to spread. But it's for showing that, in fact, this is a very common gas used in the electrical field industry. When you have this super giant electricity equipment, you fill the chamber with this gas to don't have any type of electrical discharge. So I mean, again, we have the conditions to achieve superfluidity, super condensation. We have this type of gases up there, which has, is more heavy. It's more, it not allow electricity or fire to ignite. It also reduce the sound frequency very, very rapidly. So we know that when you start going up, you lose sound. Mm-hmm. And in this type of video is very clearly because you can start hearing the change in the sound frequency.
Well, we've even seen that in Dwayne Kellum's videos, that his cameras will have a beep that goes off as well.
Yes, exactly. So for me, this type of evidence based on this type of video that you can make like a recopulation, because we are not behind this. I really love to have the money and the equipment and the work with this type of experiment, but unfortunately we are not in that team. But it's something like that. It's like the rocket, trying to go up like an arrow, like a vector, just a simple, very not heavy rocket, and then it start entering in our atmosphere, reorient, and start lose that identity crisis and recovery the identity. When they enter inside of our world.
That's crazy. It'd be interesting to find out if some of the propellants that they use in space, like what do they use? They use liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen, dinitrogen tetroxide, and hydrazine, stuff like that. I wonder if those would actually ignite in a atmosphere of hydrogen or sulfur hexafluoride, excuse me. That would be interesting to find out, and I'm sure that's an experiment that could be done down here on Earth. But if not, then that would kind of blow a hole in the NASA, rocket propulsion theory. Of course, not that it isn't already completely debunked anyway, because it violates the Newton's third law. But it would just be interesting to find out.
Yes, completely. And in fact, they're going to tell you that no, because how many particles per million are up there? Come on, man. I mean,
yeah.
Well, go there and count it. If you want to know how many are, don't bring me models based on what. So this is maybe it was better to show at the beginning, because it's this idea of something up there, that we can at least propose based on this experiment or on this type of project, is that the temperatures go lower, we have this type of gases, we have this type of properties, conditions, behaviors, and those elements all together at least give us the playground to elaborate on alternatives based on electrical universe, rather the heliocentric model of empty of space without this super vacuum type of scenario. And again, trying to going back for where we left the last show, but at the beginning, let me just recap very quickly. We just start talking about this idea of the magnetic field, electrical fields versus gravitational fields. They trying to, reverse engineering on some phenomena that you can measure, and you can use that measurement to predict things, which is the acceleration of an object falling to the ground, and they call force, whatever. And when we start entering into the, I'm going to go directly to the electrical universe thing. Let me just come back here. Is that, first of all, in terms of the at least ancient civilizations and another way of thinking, we have this idea of the Ken Wheeler type of idea, where maybe Bob can explain better, but this magnetic field and the electric field in the magnet, and the relationship between this plane of inertia and things like that. If you can elaborate very quickly, Bob.
Are you talking about the incoherent dielectric field? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
For gravity, or?
Yes,
Okay.
the type of, because you're going to explain better than me. Just that.
Okay, well, basically the idea, if I'm understanding what you want, with the idea of the incoherent dielectric field being the cause of gravity, it's because when you talk of dielectricity or dielectric fields, you're talking about a combination of an electric field and a magnetic field, and you just kind of combine those together and call it dielectric. But as Zach demonstrated in his one video showing incoherent magnetism, as you cluster different magnetic fields together, it becomes more and more incoherent, but that field always remains attractive. And the same thing happens with static fields. If you were to take a bunch of batteries and put them in series and parallel, or a bunch of charges and put them in series and parallel, you would have an overall larger potential, but it would still become, overall weaker. And when you apply that towards, gravity and an idea of an attractive force type of that, that's where the incoherent dielectric field theory of gravity is coming from.
Thank you so much. And like I mentioned before, maybe it's going to be a little, holistic in some sense, the presentation. But remember that we call, they put this atom idea of being God, and the idea behind the word atom, which means the sun god, is that in ancient culture, they take the idea of the sun to be the source of this electromagnetic, I don't know if the 100% source or at least he's involved in that creation, in the creation of our electromagnetic field. Because I know there are many people that maybe thinks in terms of the Polaris being the main source, or the axis center point in the flat Earth. I am not going to give any conclusion because I don't really know. But the things that at least seems to found every time you go into the ancient culture is this idea of the sun being this type of life giver in this sense of the electromagnetic fields. And even the guy behind the Big Bang, the theory of the Big Bang, Georges Lemaitre, he presents in one book the atom of the universe that talks, so much or less, he talks about this electromagnetic field and the power of the sun, that type of idea. We see the aurora borealis, we see this type of energy being driven by the sun, and maybe it's just an allegory, the things that you never separate from the, you cannot split atoms in terms of the quantum physics madness about, we have the quarks, the gravitons, blah, blah, blah. I'm talking about this idea that every time you split a magnet, you're going to have, again, two poles, and it's like indivisible, and you cannot separate it from this type of God if you want to see it in that way. And
it's almost like they're fractal in nature.
Yes.
You can break it up into a million pieces, but no matter what happens, you're still going to have a bipolar type of mechanism going on there.
Always.
So, yes.
You cannot divide it. You cannot divide God or divide it from God or this type of allegory. And in fact, in the Christian religion, which is a representation of the sun God, is very typically to find the figure of Jesus dressing in blue and red. And that are colors that reference to electromagnetic fields. And, just dropping onto into the table, nothing more than that. And then
you can witness the electric.
In terms of this idea behind the magnetic fields and electrical fields are physical realities. Well, you can at least witnesses these electric fields. I'm gonna just play this little video. It's very sad that the volume is so low. Sorry for that, Sharon. I cannot fix it right now, but I hope you can listen.
You can witness the electric field in action when using a plasma ball.
And again, for witness that, you need a field. You need like some type of, this is plasma, but you need at least some type of matter, right? You cannot witness in terms of the empty We cannot produce that kind of emptiness that supposedly it's in the space.
The electric field around a plasma ball is strong enough to ionize mercury, neon, helium, and even the air itself.
Which is largely nitrogen.
Mm-hmm.
But the effect weakens with distance.
So the effects weaken with distance. And for example, in terms of how you can produce light and night if you are not in a spherical world, well, it's simply, I mean, we have that conditions we have this plasma up in the sky. And it's very curious because when you pass the 60 kilometers, you live behind the ozone layer, and you are not able to see any more colors, nothing. You see black. So the idea behind the night and day, or the fact that the sun is a small source than the heliocentric model, much closer, circling above us, just taking away the light based on the ionization of a plasma, is totally compatible with reality and with observation.
Right. And you know what else that could be also, Iru, is, when you get up to that altitude, 100 kilometers or 62 miles, I was talking about, whether there's an actual physical firmament, or in this particular case, I think maybe at that altitude there is a charge potential there, or the top part of the charge potential, which does two things, which would be, possibly one of the plates, positive charge plates, or atmospheric areas that is actually fluorescing the gases in the atmosphere, like the neon gases and other gases where they fluoresce into different colors. But that field could also be acting as a containment type of field, right? Now, that's not to say that it couldn't be penetrated by something physical. And in fact, if these rockets are going up as high as they're saying they are, then they actually are being penetrated, but then they start acting really weird, by the way that they tumble and roll around. So it almost seems like, at that 100-kilometer mark, that there is this charge potential there that is keeping in and holding in not only the temperature, but fluorescing the gases, et cetera, et cetera.
Holding in the light as well, right? I mean, here we're seeing a magnetic. Mm-hmm. So if you have this incoherent magnetism at the Earth level, it would be pulling basically that light down. Yeah,
exactly. It acts as a large containment field.
Mm-hmm.
So
Exactly. And in fact, for example, when you look into this type of stratospheric balloons, this is a special robotic arm covering the sun, hiding the sun at the beginning of the experiment, and then you're gonna see the sun going away. And not just that, you remember that this type of curvature, so-called curvature, is based on what? Because the electrical field diminish in terms of, the distance, the R square, I believe, is the equation. You're going to have decay in terms of where is the source of that electromagnetic field is going to weak and become more weak and weak and weak based on distance.
Right.
Yeah, it is prone to the inverse square law.
Exactly.
It has to obey it. Absolutely, it does.
Exactly. So when we said about, in the flatter model, you have a local sun, whatever it is, I don't know if it's something physical or it's some kind of light energy concentration, whatever it is, it follows when that energy reach our atmosphere, our noble gases, our plasma, it behaves like a regular type of light of electrical field. It's going to be weak based on the distance of that source. It's going to leave like a circular pattern, based on the distance. So it doesn't have any kind of super magical explanation. And then remember that this camera is not is a GoPro camera, but I didn't correct the horizon. I leave just as it is in the experiment. Even you can see here another camera pointing directly to the robotic arm, which is also a GoPro camera. But the nice thing about this video is it's a time lapse. And remember that always the resulting image will obviously be circular. It doesn't matter if you use a rectilinear lens or if you are using a fisheye lens and trying to correct. Always it's going to be circular.
Even with my GoPro Hero 5 session, which has a linear mode, I've gone and filmed the curb across the street from my house, and there's basically a very long curb, right? And you can take that back into your image editor and see that clearly there is a curve left to right of the curb, which there just isn't in reality. You can go out there and see, but that's the way our eyes work. That's the way the camera works. If you could measure what my eyes see, you would also see a bending, but it's not a curve. The curb is straight. The street is straight.
Yes, it's always going to be a circular image, the result image. So in the time lapse, first of all, what you can see is that, at least that is my opinion, but I mean, you can see divergence ray lights, not parallel. We can start argue based on, I don't know, maybe the distance but always not just underneath the clouds, but also above the clouds. You can see this type of circular fall off in terms of the light distribution.
And they get away with saying it's parallel because anybody measuring the two rays would be very close to each other. They have to be. That's where you would do a comparison and measurement. You couldn't do it, say, this person's 10 miles away from you and you're 10 miles away from him, in which case you would get convergent shadows.
And then you can see that, for us at least, the light source getting away, and it's very the NASA never show a real time the light in the city underneath the cloud, but in this robotic arm time lapse you can clearly see how the lights turn on in that city. I don't know which city it is underneath the cloud, but I mean, you have just a regular type of behavior when the light source is going away from UR, and take the light with them, because it's not a super powerful light source. It's just what it is. So I just bring this idea in based on how we can apply regular standard understanding of electrical fields diminished with distance, and use it for explain our day and night and day situation in the flatter model. You can extrapolate and you can go a little more further. This is from Dan Dimension YouTube channel that he explained very well a lot of things based on the behavior of the sun interacting with our noble gases and our plasma, right? So let me just, sorry for this white screen, because I have activated the autosave property of on PowerPoint. Then you have another type of interaction based on electrical and magnetic fields, which is the aurora borealis. So in the heliocentric model, supposedly is the particles of the solar winds that hit our atmosphere and bring all these magnificent colors. And well, I mean, that could be the same thing in the flatter model. I am not have a specific theory behind it, but which is something strange is that, again, in ancient cultures, they refer in the idea of the moon and the sun and the aurora borealis, and also like a black sun being like this power source where reality get manifest. You can see always also depictions with a black woman representing the black sun, The white dress is because it's the moon, the green wings referring to the aurora borealis, and of course the yellow is our standard light, which came from the sun. And this type of and let me just trying to give my opinion on this, because after all, in all this idea of changing the model, like we mentioned in the first part, the thing of the heliocentric model is a model that trying to tell you that we don't have any so-called magic thing inside us. We are just dust, became life, and we are a meaningless organism, without any kind of properties to manifest our own reality. But in the other hand, you have not the flat Earth model, but this ancient concept based on that, this idea of the matrix numbers, which are represented by the aurora borealis in our real observation of the world, which is some kind of divine energy. And always, for example, when I don't know if you do the same thing, but when, for example, you have a birthday and someone tell you, ask for a wish, you always close your eyes and trying to go into your own darkness inside of your brain to create a reality. And in fact, some, maybe more typical things when you are, I want to create this new business or this new project. And what you do, you're trying to, maybe close your eyes, you put you rest your head into your hands and close your eyes, trying to focus to think in something that it's not in terms of the reality. I don't know if I explained very well, but that idea of the black sun, in terms of ourselves and then in the world manifestation is kind of the same. I mean, you create things from nothing. You have a thought, that thought doesn't have any coordinates in space, it doesn't have any reality in terms of matter, but you can then create it. And the idea of the black sun being the creator or the energy that manifests in our reality is something that you can achieve in these ancient cultures. And, it's why I bring that in this part of the presentation, because I don't know, Bob, if you have, or you, Jenna, has a special theory behind the aurora borealis, but...
Not really. It just seems to me that, that there is the start of an electric field there. And of course, if the Mount Meru magnetic mountain is there, it could be, particulates interacting with that. It's pretty much the same as what the mainstream model of aurora borealis is, I think, just some sort of a charged particle interaction. But the field there is obviously incredibly intense. Now, as far as this supposed field, supposedly it's there also on, around the southern edges, but, I've seen very little footage that shows that all the way around what we would call the Antarctica ice ring. So I'm not sure what to think about that. But, in any event, I think that it definitely has magnetic origins for sure. Mm-hmm. And it is some sort of particle interaction with it. So not too far off from what the mainstream theory is.
And then the theory would be that it's there during the day too. It's just too bright to see.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and that is the explanation based on what we observe. But what exactly it's doing? What happened if the aurora borealis disappear, for example? Nobody can, I mean,
I don't think it'd be a good thing.
No, for me either, man. But this type of things, I trying to bring the relationship between with what we observe, and we can elaborate theories on that, but also with the function of that being there, just as a philosophical type of game. I just live there, but that is why I also like to go a little more deep into maybe what they think in terms of the ancient cultures or other type of philosophies around the world. And of course, the idea behind the electric sun, maybe at least for me, I reached or I became aware from this theory based on the work from Donald Scott and
Waldthorn Hill.
Wilhelm Hell, and the other one, the guys, I forget the name of Eric Dollar.
Oh, Eric Dollard, yeah, yep.
Yeah, Eric Dollar. So I'm gonna play just a little clip for people maybe understand better what happened in the hypothesis of the electric sun versus the heliocentric model.
My name is Don Scott. The electric sun is a sort of a natural outgrowth of the electrical universe hypothesis. We know that their magnetic fields actually had a circuit that showed the electric sun. What I'd like to do today is to show some of the problems of the so-called standard model. That word model should be plural, models, because for every thing that we see in the sun, there seems to be a new model, or at least another patch on the previous existing model. Problems that I feel, at least, are fatal, absolutely fatal, for the models that are so-called accepted these days. And I would like to then demonstrate how precisely those problems are no problem at all for the electrical sun model. The big problem, the famous problem, is the missing neutrinos. The idea of this heat transport from the core to the surface. There are some oscillations in the sun's size and brightness.
And oscillations in terms of the sun's size and brightness. That's, well, let me just keep, you can hear something of the audio, guys?
Yeah, it's quiet.
We can hear it, no problem.
Oh, okay.
And of course, oscillations in the solar wind, as somebody pointed out the other day. If there's a fusion reaction going on in the core, then how can does this reaction, does it have periodicities? That's never been discussed by nuclear physicists. There is actually a temperature minimum in the chromosphere. Where in the world does that come from? If the heat is all generated at the core, the temperature should get lower and lower and lower the further away you get from this thing. All of a sudden you find there's a minimum and then the temperature increases. Totally inexplicable.
Exactly. This is completely incommensurate with a thermonuclear reaction. In other words, the mainstream model of the sun being this thermonuclear reaction is complete bollocks. There's nothing about that it supports it, not to mention the fact that there is clearly a magnetic field that is surrounding the orb that we're calling the sun. So again, this is not, and it's a very static and very consistent field that remains around it. So none of this, what mainstream tells us is commensurate at all with a sun that is a thermonuclear reaction. It's absurd.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
So-called model or models. The sun actually oscillates in brightness from a few minutes to near an hour. So the thing is pulsating very rapidly.
And that is another thing. I mean, this thing, it's pulsating very rapidly. And if you bring into your mind the simulations from the FA core in terms of the sun being a living creature, if you want to see in that way, but it's something that has life, it's pulsating, so it's produced waves, it's produced that's it. For me, it's more explainable the terms of the how you call the waves in the ocean, sorry for the
periodicity, the oscillation of it, or
the tides.
Oh, the tides. Okay, yes,
yeah.
Which is another cyclical thing.
Exactly. And well, let me just finish. But the thing is pulsating, and how many ideas from ancient culture you can bring with idea of something being the voice of God pulsating or vibrate and expand and that kind of thing.
No way in this world, in this solar system, that could happen. And the third one is, to me, astounding if you haven't heard about it. That is, there's an expansion and contraction of the sun in the size of the sun. The thing actually bulges and fluctuates in size like a balloon.
How can you explain that in a heliocentric model?
You can't. It's completely inconsistent.
And even Donald Scott says in this presentation, the extension of the inflation is 10 kilometers. So how can you measure 10 kilometers in the magnificent size, magnanimous size of the sun? How can you detect 10 kilometers?
Yeah, especially 93 million miles away.
Exactly.
That's ridiculous.
So I don't know why these guys are not a flat earther. I mean,
is to me astounding if you haven't heard about it. That is, there's an expansion and contraction of the sun in the size of the sun. The thing actually bulges and fluctuates in size like a balloon. And the extent of that bulging is 10 kilometers. And that happens at about a period of about 160 minutes. Where did that come from? How do you explain it from the so-called standard model? They just ignore it.
So again, I bring this, and let me just compare very quickly with the standard model, the heliocentric model with the NASA employers, because this is, I remember I took this video, I believe was from Video Brain, and it's amazing because this guy is a representative of NASA. He works on the SOHO proof, the observatory of the sun, and they laugh in the face of everybody here in this audience, because it's the model of the sun that NASA presents us is completely a marketing thing, it's, and they telling you in your face.
For a minute, because so many people accuse me of lying to them.
And he started the lecture saying, so many people accuse me to lie, to lie them.
They tell me I'm using false colors. Okay, I'm not. Okay, the colors that you see on any image from the Solar Dynamics Observatory, they're not false colors, they're just lies. Okay, in general, you can't see the light that we're trying to show you. If you want, we can show you, we have 36 million images from our spacecraft right now. I can show them all to you in black and white. Would you like that? Or would you rather see that floor?
This is pathetic.
Yeah, well, and he's going to start to elaborate on the Kelvin's measurement of the sun, the heat, the power of the sun.
The temperature on the sun starts at about 6,000 Kelvin, which is almost 10,000 Fahrenheit, and goes down a little bit. That doesn't really count, but then it goes up a lot. It's going to go up to 20 million Kelvin. Okay, it's really hot. All right, and okay, yeah, some people like to know that. Okay, and the other thing you're going to see is that we have gotten into the practice of never showing you an image. You're going to see a couple images now because it just didn't work the way I wanted to do this. But you're going to see a lot of funky stop action movies because we have so many images, we just put them together and make movies out of everything. I mean, that's the cool thing about SDO is that in general, we have we can look at what happened and what happened before and what happened afterwards, and we're going to show it to you. Because that's what we're doing now.
That's all they show us is images. There's nothing but images. Either that or they don't understand the definition of image.
But at least they put some eyes and a smiley face here.
Down there, that's pretty
Well, that's true.
Yeah. So it's gonna finish,
Still got eyes. Now it's got an ear over there too. Got a mouth. This is the old man in the sun.
And the guy is telling the audience, it has eyes and a little mouth too.
With the straight face.
Yeah.
Okay. This is something, I have the temperature down here so I won't forget. 600,000 Kelvin. We are at about 1 million Kelvin.
1 million Kelvin, yeah.
2 million Kelvin. 2.5 million Kelvin. We really like million Kelvin.
We really love millions of Kelvins, yeah.
I hate MK, but I use it anyway. 6 million Kelvin, 10 million Kelvin. Oh, what's that? Who ordered that? That is what we really want to measure. That's the magnetic field of the sun.
Ah.
If it's white, it's magnetic field that's pointing toward you. If it's black, it's magnetic field pointing away from you. How many people would want to get a compass and try and walk around on that? Okay, all the physical impossibility things aside, if somebody handed you a compass and said, go navigate on the sun, what would happen? I mean, your compass would just go crazy. It would be pointing north, you'd walk over here, it'd be pointing south, you'd walk back over here, and the magnetic field of the sun is unbelievably complicated compared to the relatively smooth field that we have here on the Earth. And that's why we continue to study it now, 100 years after it was first measured. And we still don't understand where it came from or where it comes from. And
That's because it doesn't work in your model.
Exactly. And something that I don't know what is your opinion, Bob. Maybe you are more, capable than, and I'm going to include also Jera maybe in this one. But when you go to the polar Arctic, for example, when you're trying to, get close of the polar Arctic, you have this. No, sorry, this is the Antarctic. Let me just this one. You have this, the compass on the plane or on the ground is going to turn crazy when you're trying to get close to the North Pole, right? You're gonna have the needle, going in all directions. I don't know if you see that those videos on the ground. This guy, the pilot, is showing it in the compass of the plane, and he talks about that. Mm-hmm. But when you go south, when you go to the south, what you have is the opposite thing. You have the compass, stay stable. It's like doesn't work there. It's not turning crazy, and it's pointing to the north.
Right.
It's like, so we have a monopole in our world, or centric type of magnetic field, or.
Yeah, I think magnets point to the north. That's just me. I don't think, when they make a southern hemispheres, they call it magnet. They just paint the other end of the needle. Bob, you?
Well, yeah, compasses definitely point to the north. And if, again, going back to the Mount Meru idea, if Mount Meru is actually there and we've got the northern part of it actually exposed above the surface, it would not be unreasonable to assume then that the southern end of that magnetic dipole would be deep, deep down under the ground. Now, of course, at that point, then it would create a toroidal magnetic field all around the plane, but you wouldn't necessarily be seeing the southern side of it, because the southern pole of the magnetic field would be largely attenuated, from the Earth itself. That's why when you go down to Antarctica or whatever, compasses do not point to the south. You are still referencing a north reference point. So to me, that's what's actually going on, and that's just even that much more evidence to show that this is a plane and not a sphere that we're on.
Yeah, I totally agree. Some comparisons based on our regular observations here from Earth. If you go to NASA, they're trying to make believe that the sun spins, and even in our in the mainstream, for example, like you can find that on Wikipedia or those type of sites. They telling you that, for example, the solar flares, they are like moving in a liquid. They are not static and rotating with the sun, but instead they are just moving on the surface of the sun. So how is possible that you have reference to assume that the sun spins in his own axis if you don't have any static thing to compare? I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say.
Not exactly, no. Maybe you could rephrase it.
Okay, maybe I'm going to rephrase. The solar flares, not the flares, I mean the black thing, the splat, how is the name?
The sunspots.
Sunspot. Thank you. The sunspot, when you go to, I don't know if it's going to say here exactly in Wikipedia, because I have my browser in Spanish, but the official narrative is that the the sunspot are moving on top of the surface of the sun as it's been in a liquid. When you, for example, have like a leaf in the river, which, you know, the leaf is going to move with the currents of the river, but it's independently. It's not fixed in the river. So the sunspots are not something that it's static there. It's something that is like a floating on the surface of the sun and change it, you know, like we observe. So why NASA is showing like
right, the sun,
because people believe that this spinning sun is true with these static things, you know. They don't assume that it's something like it's just like fluid going from one part to the other. They assume that it's rotating, and you know that is why the sun is spherical, because it's rotate.
Yeah, sure it is.
No, but I get what you're saying. There's no outside kind of physical edge that you'd be able to see and say, "Oh, that's spinning."
Yes, exactly. Yeah, thank you for resuming me. But again, going back in terms of the physical science that we know in our days, anytime that, you know, someone trying to recreate our sun, they need to, you know, leave apart all the standard knowledge and assume and trying to recreate in terms of magnetic fields. So I'm gonna play this little clip and. Well, first of all, this is the Lieberman explained that you cannot see the source of the light in space. You need a medium to see it, which is something to have into consideration.
It is not transmitted. Light is not transmitted in the visible spectrum in outer space. The visible spectrum effect of the sun is created by the upper atmosphere. It will blind you, but you can't see it. What you see is the refraction of the sun in the upper atmosphere. That's all you see. And the minute you get out of the atmosphere, you got no reflection between you and it.
En la computadora sucede lo mismo. So what is what NASA show us, you know, all the time when they go out with the ISS and things like that? You know, maybe here on computer graphic, it's the same thing. You need to, for example, right now, if I just show you, you can see here, this is a GoPro camera, but here you can see like a little tiny light shining part in the edge of this horizon. And that is because I have a light on top of here. But the black represent emptiness in the computer. So when I add an atmosphere, when I increase the density of the atmosphere, the light becomes immediately visible. But again, we need some kind of medium to have that.
Right.
You know?
There's one problem I have with what Eric Lindemann said, and that is, you know, I agree with him because he's also the one that gives the example of, you know, he takes the laser pointer, right? And
yes.
he says, and he holds it sideways and he goes, "Can you see the beam?" And obviously no. Well, that's because the beam is not hitting anything to reflect or refract off of. So his whole point is he's saying that you would never be able to see any of the lights in space. And to that, I would largely agree, except for one thing. You would have to be able to see them if you were looking directly at them, regardless of whether or not there's a medium, you know, in between you or these stars in the first place, right? Because it would be just like that laser pointer. Yeah, you can't see the beam that's emanating it going from side to side, but if you point it directly at you, the source itself is the light. So I don't agree with him entirely, you know, about what he's saying, that you wouldn't be able to see anything like that in space. That doesn't resonate with me.
The only thing that I maybe elaborate on that commentary is that if we have this type of gases or plasma in the upper atmosphere, we never getting out yet to really prove that. We are still inside of our container.
True, but I mean, what he's saying is that there's something so we have these stars like the sun and the stars, and they're supposedly putting out emissions in the full EM spectrum, right? From basically RF through X-ray through gamma ray and through light visible rays. But so he's saying that then all of a sudden these stars are they're putting out emissions everywhere else except the light spectrum. And what he's saying is that whatever it is in the atmosphere, the gases in the atmosphere are acting as some sort of a step down or step up to bring those frequencies into the visible light spectrum. Again, I can't buy that. That doesn't ring true to me.
No, okay. And again, I am not the only thing that I trying to bring with that commentary is that this idea that if you are in the vacuum of space in terms of the heliocentric model in this emptiness, how can you see light, visible light, like NASA show us all the time, if you don't have some medium to project that light? That is right. the idea behind it. But
well, I think the answer to that is because the sun is not where they say it is, and it's in a completely different environment. So to us, I think that answer is obvious. But in terms of the NASA model, you're absolutely right. If NASA is standing by what Lindemann is saying, then they would have to say then that you would see absolutely nothing in space. And of course, we've heard that, right? We've heard the astronauts. Some astronauts say, "Oh no, you can't see anything but the Earth at all." But then some of the astronauts have said, "Well, you can see the sun."
The same astronauts say.
Yeah, true. You can see the sun and the moon, but nothing else. But then, I don't know if the Apollo astronauts, being as how they're the only ones that ever left, or low Earth orbit, allegedly, if they said anything about the sun or not. That would be interesting if there was any commentary on that. But, if
from space, they definitely said you could see the sun.
Did they say that? Okay, see, so that would kind of debunk what Lindemann said. But we all know that that's all bullshit anyway, so I don't even know why we reference it.
Because it just shows the inability. And then it's funny for somebody like that guy who says that, does he then not believe in the Apollo astronauts? Because he probably does and doesn't recognize that they say they could see it. So
yeah, it makes you wonder, doesn't it?
and this is the part of the text that I trying to explain myself a few minutes ago, and I failed completely. But the idea is that the sunspot move across the surface of the sun. So you don't have any static reference to say the sun is rotating as NASA show us. So
right. Okay. I get what you're saying. Yes, I understand. It could be like something floating across your eye. Like if you squint your eyes closed really tight and you open them and you can see these little black spots kind of floating across your vision.
Yes. But that is mainstream information. This is a screen capture from Wikipedia. So, I mean, just referring that because a lot of people believe that the suns do this, but instead is the sunspot moving across the surface, not the sun rotating. Or at least you don't have that kind of confirmation. That is what I'm trying to explain. Yeah. So coming back to this idea, trying to connect dots. I mean, we have these electromagnetic fields coming from the sun, maybe mixed together with Polaris or Mount Meru or whatever. But the idea is that if we have these conditions, well, the acceleration of gravity, well, you can explain, and maybe even in this type of explanation, maybe you can prove and trying to base on things that you can recreate here on Earth based on the electrical fields. You know better than me this type of explanation. But even this is from a book from Brazilian scientists that talks about the same thing that we see in other type of explanation coming from the electric universe. This idea basically of the electric gravity.
Yep.
Okay. So and again, maybe we discussed this many times, but in terms of the electrical fields, you have an orientation which always is perpendicular to the surface when the electric. Well, let me just play the video. It's going to explain better than me.
Electric field lines are perpendicular to the source and the terminal. That is, they always come out perpendicular to surfaces that are positive and enter perpendicular to the surfaces that are negative. Perpendicular at all times. This can be seen in these lettuce seed demonstrations. Soaked in vegetable oil are little lettuce seeds, and each side is getting charged oppositely. You'll notice the electric field is perpendicular to the conductors, even if the conductor is just a single point charge. Notice also that the electric field is 0 inside of this conductor. That is, there are no lettuce seeds moving.
And I show this because I'm going to reference this concept when we talk about the moon craters, for example, which always are like the crater enter perpendicular to the surface of the moon and never leave a trail behind or nothing like that. And, you know, it's like something that the electricity allows orientation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you have negative charge and positive charge, you have orientation.
Yeah, it's interesting they go in perpendicular and give us our equipotential lines of charge. So, yeah, that's cool. This is a great demonstration, actually. I love this.
Yeah, even if it's a single point of energy. So, you know, just having that in mind. And, of course, we all see SAC recreation with the Van der Broef, sorry for my pronunciation, machine equipment, and the idea when he changed the potential, the charges, you know, positive and negative, he changed that, the paper goes up to the negative charge, right?
Yeah, boy, that looks a lot like my bedroom upstairs.
We know that. But I mean, I bring this because, again, with electrical field, you can at least imagine better the things that give us orientation, why we are stuck in the ground, why the earth is considered negative charge, the sky is a positive charge, and all this idea behind up and down. It's better if we call ground and sky, you know, if you or negative and positive charge, and stop saying up and down, maybe, you know. And of course, like we all know, for many other experiments, all the materials have charges, and, you know, static electricity and other type of things. So we don't know, we are not able to isolate from our electrical fields and magnetic field coming from the earth, even in the cage of how is the name of I forget.
Faraday?
Faraday cage. You are not. You're never going to have individual of these elements to really, you know, conclude something. But good plastic, water, metals, you know, organic things all have electricity.
Absolutely.
So again,
everything does.
Everything does. So you have a potential charge. You know, I am not the best to explain that, but even with the, you know, with the magnet, you can push on organic beans. You know, like this tiny mouse here. You know, I mean, everything reacts with magnetism and electricity.
Mm-hmm. We've all seen the frog floating in the magnetic field. If it's strong enough, it doesn't matter if it's not magnetic. You know, if the field is strong enough, it will still affect it.
Yeah,
and that's the interesting thing. So I think maybe it's inaccurate to say things, you know, don't have any magnetic effect, or, you know, they may have very, very little magnetic properties that would allow them to be affected by magnetism. But I think ultimately, if the field is strong enough, you know, nothing is going to be immune.
No, and consider the size of the Earth.
Exactly.
So yeah. we don't know which is underneath the Earth, and we don't see the model from outside. So we don't know exactly. The only thing that we know is that things, at least, seems to be stuck, quote unquote, stuck on the ground, and more, and gases and other things go up in the sky, and we have all these conditions. Again, we have even magnetic pressure, and so again, the only thing, trying to resume myself, but let me just play this tiny clip about magnetic fields again.
Could it be the way the molecular structures are properly explained? I believe so. Let's take a look at the forces at work in the nucleus area of these bowl-shaped magnetic fields. Shown here are ordinary non-magnetized 5mm steel balls. These bowl-shaped magnetic fields induce a magnetic field into each steel ball, which causes them to repel each other while at the same time keeping the balls structured together. So this mysterious force not only causes the steel balls to become packed tightly together, but it also...
How is a mysterious force? The thing is that these things keep shape, keep orientation, keep what? A mysterious force?
Yeah, no, I mean, we know what the force is. What I think is mysterious is how it maintains the perfect geometry that it does.
Yes.
That, to me, is mind-boggling.
And nobody can show you the particle in terms of the field of the magnetic field. And in fact, that is why the guy that I present at the beginning of the show, he called fluxons. Show me a fluxon, please.
Yeah, and it's not even the magnetic field, if you really want to get down to it. I mean, honestly, I believe it's the etheric field that is being pressure mediated by the magnet, the magnetic property, not magnetic, that's not the word I want. Anyway, the magnetic properties of the balls themselves, or the field that surrounds it. The balls, he said, were non-magnetic. But yeah, it's so... Again, you kind of have to turn your entire way of thinking around and not look at these little balls or magnets in particular as having this field around them so much as they have an influence on the etheric field that is around everything. And I think that's probably a little bit better way to look at it.
Them apart. Then it does this while at the same time forming a geometrically balanced pattern, just as we find with molecules. Notice the vibration in all of the steel balls as each new ball is added to the nucleus area. What we see at work here is what I believe would truly be defined as the strong force.
Or the ether force, right?
Well, the ether, how it's influencing the ether.
Influence, yeah.
Right.
Thank you. So, again, I mean, we have this perfect balance in terms of magnetism,
Yeah, the geometry is amazing.
It's amazing. And it causes repulsion, it causes attraction, so you can have equilibrium without the opposite, the exact opposite of those conditions. And that is something that I don't know if you can achieve with gravity, that supposedly some guys say that it's just one-way force, and the others say that no, but you can have negative gravity.
Right.
What?
Yeah, well, I guess that depends on how you look at gravity. If you're looking at gravity as its own autonomous type of field, then I doubt it. But if you look at gravity as a dielectric type of field, then absolutely. So I think you have to be really careful when what terms you're defining so-called gravity under, right?
Yeah.
And of course, the whole Einstein idea is completely out the window. That's just stupid. So
yeah, and again, and I mentioned, well, the idea of Nikola Tesla. Sorry, because this is in Spanish, but he talks about the the idea of the gravitational field could be explained like a universal interaction in terms of compression.
Pressure mediation. That's what he's saying.
Exactly. And I'm not going to play this clip because I believe it's with copyright strike. You can still hear me, guys?
Yeah, we hear you.
Great.
Okay, perfect. No, because my computer gets stuck.
Yes.
And
so this is a great clip, though, but you're right. You would get a copyright claim on it.
Yes, exactly. But he talks about the this article presented in Nature, talking about the existence of the ether field.
The ether. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that article exists. I downloaded you too, Bob. So
yeah, I've got it too, and all the citations. I have all of it.
Yes, and I talk at the beginning or in the middle of the presentation about ancient cultures, because a lot of guys, they also go trying to find, or trying to understand the ancient cultures in terms of even Nikola Tesla, one of his most friends was Swami Vivekananda, I cannot pronounce well, which was a Vedic guy.
Mm-hmm.
And you cannot leave apart the Vedic cosmology and other ancient cosmology, because it seems like they know better than us a lot of things, right? So Definitely. That is why all the time I try to bring this idea to take into consideration that. And of course, maybe something that, not much people in terms of the science want to go there, is who financed some theories. Mm-hmm. And of course, Einstein is one of the target. Maybe from Copernicus to Georges Lamet, is all financed by the church, the Jesuit order, but also in the scientists which are present in terms of, no, but this is not religious people. Well, but behind it, it's also Freemasonry, it's also bankers, and the same names came out one and again and again and again.
Grabblers is what Eero's trying to say.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's interesting that Tesla had the Swami guy as a friend, and I think it just goes to show you that philosophy and physics are a lot more closely related than most people would care to believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, completely agree. And well, if you want to follow along all the idea behind the electric universe, of course, the Thunderbird project, you can go there and they talk about other phenomena, celestial phenomena that we can observe here from the ground. And of course, the toroidal field that we are, so many times referenced to explain things. And remember that this is, for me, this message is very powerful, because we're trying to explain things like in a straight way, in the straight line, between A and B. Mm-hmm. But nature does all that kind of things in vortex.
That's a lot.
And
of
that is what we observe.
Yeah, Walter Russell said a lot of the same stuff. Some of these images are probably from him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, could be. Yeah. So in terms of imagining that, and again, I'm going back to Vedic cosmology and ancient cosmology, but remember that the Shri Chantra is a representation of a flat plane surrounding by electromagnetic field. And of course, a lot of depiction of this Shri Chantra is representing in 2D, like we see here. But when you get this into 3D, you're going to observe some type of Van Allen belts, when heliocentric model trying to explain that. And again, everything came from a center point and expand in this onion style of layers. And we are in the middle of that.
Right, and notice how the field penetrates downwards. That's what I was saying. Yes. So if the magnet the north end of the magnet is Mount Meru protruding above the ground, and the south end is the south side, this is exactly the kind of pattern you would be able to expect from it.
Yes. Completely agree.
And theoretically, I think that if this is the case and there's a magnetic kind of substance to that, I think that possibly you could put something in some sort of a circular orbit, if you will. It wouldn't be an orbit like we've been taught, but more of a track, right above our heads. I could see it being possible.
Yeah. And go ahead, Bob. Sorry.
I was just going to say, just like the earlier demonstration with the superconductors.
Correct,
that type of thing, on a track where you have a some sort of a medium that the superconductor is acting from,
right? We're not
whether it's a charge potential or something else.
Right. We're not saying it's an actual track, not a metal track up there, but a magnetic track that you could basically ride on.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
A field line, if you will.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you went from one field line to the next, as long as you were always kind of picking up a little bit behind where you were, you would stay elevated.
Yes, and all the representation of the torus field, controlling the torus, and you can go very deeply with Santos Bonacci in terms of those. We have also this map, giving us these 4 corners or these 4 points of maybe, I don't know how I call it in English, but sorry for my lack of an explanation. For me it's a little bit frustrating trying to explain these things, but even, I mean, when I present the guy talking about the flux zone and doing these circular rails based on magnet, well, but the object is not touching the magnet. The object is it's moving in something that is not. It doesn't have matter.
And it's even locked in a position.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. But it's not touching. The magnet is producing. So the idea that you are explaining before is completely compatible what we have in the sky, because all you need is a source that produces those reals.
Mm-hmm.
Just that. So in fact, in the Vedic cosmology, remember that the planet, it's orbiting in different altitudes, like a different type of reals of magnetism. Everything is moving in the heliocentric way, in terms we are static and we are a plane static, and the sun being like the carrier of all the planets. Even Cassini create or he represent the image of all these harmonic patterns. And that is why the Ptolemy model, you cannot disprove. You have the retrograde motion of the planet, creating these harmonic fields, this harmonic shape like we see before with magnets. So this is the representation. This is Polaris, this is Mount Meru, and this is the plane of existence that we are. The sun, the moon in different orbital planes with Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, etc., etc. But the motions are not just simply circular, supposedly, for the Vedics. They have these harmonic shapes based on frequencies, based on what we can observe also here on Earth. When you make the how you call the luminescence frequencies,
the sonoluminescence frequencies.
Sonoluminescence, and the other one when you just use grain of sand and you
cymatics.
Cymatics, yes. Exactly.
Yep.
So again, for me, the concept of trying to explain orbital mechanics just in a circular or elliptic pattern is thinking that for getting from A to B is a straight line.
That's right. That's 2D thinking, and the field theory is anything but 2D.
Yes.
And I think that's one way that we're misled in a lot of ways. And even in the heliocentric model, they always portray it, in this 2-dimensional thing, like this is how it has to work. It's like, no, that's not how it has to work. And it doesn't even make sense that it would work that way. But yet we're always portrayed, this heliocentric model in a 2-dimensional type of, representation, which I think is just dishonest.
Yeah. So again, we can observe, at least in different and variety of models, again, we are under this type of this divine geometry.
Sacred geometry, yes.
Sacred geometry, yes. And well, this is a little reference that I really like. The word freedom become like a freedom, if you want to be free, or the compass, which come and pass, this type of ideas. I really like the power behind words that we use, just simply as that. And again, I'm going to play this tiny clip. Let me how we are, Jeran. It's okay. We can.
We're fine.
Go.
Yeah.
We're fine.
We can,
Okay.
yeah,
Because now it's entering the part of the sun, stars, and and we are almost maybe half hour more. We close the presentation.
Okay. Good.
Okay. So again, this type of experiments, what I really like is that the guys who trying to recreate the sun, they always are connected with ancient knowledge, and also leave apart all the classic science that we trying to use to explain things. Because we can explain, assuming a lot of things, but when you're trying to go into the lab, you're gonna start fail. And that is really important to have in mind. So let me just play this clip and make some commentary on top.
So excited to be here today. So the first time I met Paul, this is many years ago, I walked in and he said, Karen.
So first of all, look at in the background. We have here a Vimana. So that tells you something about the background of this guy.
I created this sun in a jar. I got this star in a jar. I'm like, you're kidding me. He's like, oh yeah, all that stuff you've learned, put it on the back of your brain because I'm going to show you something awesome. But this is just to show off. This is to show off Paul and some of the really neat ways that elements work and that chemistry works. And
so what this really is a oversimplification.
Again, the Horus eye in the background.
Yep, this is a great video here. I haven't seen this in like 2 or 3 years, so I'm glad you have it.
Okay.
Of what?
And the name, the reference, they're going to talk about dragon.
Dragon really is. It's combining a yin and yang energy frequency together, and they both attract. They want what each other has. There's value in that exchange. So, contrary to what they teach.
Again, he starts contrary to what they teach in science.
In science. Contrary to what they teach in science, the universe is actually magnetic and light. The universe
is
actually magnetic and light. It's not gravitational driven. It's not gravitational driven. So what this is I'm going to induce an electrical and magnetic field. This outer ball is the male or yang field. And this silver one inside is the yin or female field.
Fascinating.
So just like males and females like to do, they are going to go at it. So with no further ado, I'm going to now put this over.
I am not so sure with that concept in our times, sorry.
I know, I thought that was kind of weird too.
So instead of a sun actually being a...
And again, look how many times he contradicts modern science.
A fusion generator eating its own hydrogen and helium, and over time, it's going to use all of its fuel. The sun is actually being powered by something else.
And nobody knows what the sun is. They all the time, all these guys which are recreating real science in labs, they assume that the sun is like a transformer, but it's a generic word to say we don't have a clue what happened up there.
No, they don't have a clue. And
but at least these guys are honest.
Right.
Because he said nobody knows. It's something that is powering from some other place,
Yeah, I think Eric Dollard is probably the closest when he's saying that, it is a transformer of some kind, and it's transforming an energy into this realm. And that's probably about as accurate as it gets, I would say.
And then you can, even he says, what is it beyond that? We don't know.
Yep.
Something you don't get from mainstream science. They never say anything they don't know. They know everything. They know how much a neutron star weighs. Come on.
Yeah, well, that's the problem with mainstream science, because these guys go through, they get their PhDs, they're expected to know all the answers. So, if they don't have something that's obvious or measured or anything like that, well, then they just make up some bullshit,
right.
And it sticks, unfortunately.
And if it's not true, well, then when eventually they find it out what it is, well, then eventually it will be true. And that's the great thing about science, is we're always moving towards the truth. It's just some elaborate scam.
Yeah, but they give us crap for hypothesizing.
How dare you?
How dare they?
There's something else that's acting on that.
Something else is acting on that
female field, if you will, that's creating that sun.
There's no fusion in the sun. They don't know how the sun works.
What's a transformer? Transforms from some other dimension. It's not burning anything. It doesn't have to. It's a converter. I don't know. Nobody knows. But that's what it does. That's the only thing it can do, because that's how everything works.
So the sun is not visible in that.
It's not in free space. It's only invisible when gross matter becomes involved, like the Earth's atmosphere and envelope and the surface of the moon or whatever. That makes the light. So that means there's no time delay. So the whole time delay thing is meaningless. It doesn't take light years. There are no light years because there's no light. So that means that the light you see from the distant stars isn't 4 million years old. It could be only minutes old. It could be instantaneous. All the theories collapse when you can't see the stars in outer space.
And again, for example, here, well, you are not able, maybe because the camera, the device is not proper selected to see stars under the sky, but in the space, sorry. But why NASA still doesn't show us that, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is no one space agency that show us the space in star, the star in space. I'm gonna just finish the clip with this nonsense contradiction between astronauts, a tiny one.
The stars, if any, and so on. Deep black. The sky is almost white with the light of the universe, with the uncountable number of stars. Deep black. You can't see the constellations because the sky is just so alive with stars.
The most unexpected thing, I think, was the blackness of space.
White. Deep black. White. Black. White.
The blackness.
White. 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 White.
There with the world right there, and then when you look the other way, it's the whole universe, and the blackness is a palpable blackness. It's not just dark. It's forever.
Forever.
It's not just dark.
And the other thing, of course, that completely blows their theory out of the water is that if indeed stars were actually thermonuclear reactions or gigantic burning balls of hydrogen, there is simply no way that they would be omitting the light spectrum, right? So they want us to believe that they would be emitting frequencies and EM radiation in every single spectrum except visible light. And that's just nonsense, right? That's another thing that completely blows that whole theory away, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. It just can't happen.
Yeah, I mean, they contradict himself so many times that it's you lose the count. I mean,
yeah,
you cannot
exactly.
make at the beginning, maybe with 2-minute clips, you have it all. But now you need to do like a 24-hour stream live streams,
And now it's just embarrassing.
It's amazing.
At this point. It's just embarrassing.
Yeah, but everything points to, some kind of fields that driving all this reality in terms of electrical fields, magnetic fields, the ether, all that kind of stuff. You always need a medium to, interact. So that is the reference that I pointing out.
It's a funny position. It's a funny position that NASA's in as well, with all these astronauts getting it wrong about stars, because they can never repair it. That's the hilarious thing, is when you've got now at this point, you can't come out and say one or the other is true, because it makes the other half of the people look like liars. So you just have to leave it alone, because you've backed yourself into the corner. You can't say it either way now. You can't ever come out and say, yeah, there is some confusion, but actually we can see the stars, because then everybody like Armstrong and everybody who said you can't. But they can't come out and say you can't, because everybody who says, oh, you see all these millions of dots and millions of... So they're stuck.
Yeah, exactly. That would be as dumb as if I were to go back and say, after seeing the eclipse happen in 2017, and that was one of the most magnificent things I have ever seen in my life, I will never forget it. That would be like me going back and saying, oh, I don't remember really seeing anything. It's like, it's not going to happen.
Right.
Yeah. Completely agree. So again, that is why maybe I mentioned so many times, going back into the Asian culture, because all these guys, even the Thunderbolt project talks about, the antiquity concepts. And again, for example, when you go to, trying to create a star in terms of what we understand or what we see in the sky, like it seems like a star. Sorry, because this is in Spanish, but of course you have the original article is in English. Always they need water, that it is as a medium, And I have this, I believe it's in Spanish, but I think I have it, the English version.
It began when
No, I leave this in English. And this is, is what it happened here, but explained from the own scientists behind that project. And again, listen how many times they need to talk about magic and incomprehensible. I cannot even pronounce it. So I'm gonna play the video.
It began when physicist Seth Putterman heard about something that seemed more like magic than science.
More like magic than science. It's all the time magic, I don't know if you can hear it, the sound.
No, I don't.
You can hear it, that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, that is the sound to collapse and create the star.
Let me hear it.
It's a vibration that it's amazing. I mean, that sounds, it came from that experiment. It's not a bad sound of the video, okay?
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, I do hear that then. I'm sorry, I misunderstood it.
No, they need to use sound as a frequency to create that light.
Interesting. Almost sounds like birds chirping in one part of it.
Called sonoluminescence.
Wow, that looks like what stars look like when you zoom in.
Is made when a sound wave is passed through a small bubble inside a flask of liquid. And this sound wave makes the bubble do something remarkable. First it expands, then it collapses. And this collapse happens so violently that vapor molecules trapped inside the bubble slam together and heat up so much that the bubble gives off an incredible burst of heat and light, several thousand times a second, giving the appearance of a star.
Looked like a star in the heavens.
What made the phenomenon so exciting was the temperature of this star in a jar. On its surface alone, the light burns at tens of thousands of degrees. And Seth Putterman now contemplated a tantalizing possibility.
Well, this is an extraction from a complete documentary trying to find the cold fusion, cold fission and confusion. But again, you need a liquid, you need a sound vibration, you need a medium, and you can create the sonoluminescence for something that seems like a star.
Right.
It seems like a star, but not. It's not star because the stars are,
Well, perhaps it is trillions of miles inside that jar. We never know.
Maybe it's a giant jar. Yeah, it's a giant jar.
Really big jar.
Really big jar.
Yes, exactly. So again, you need you can reference to a Christian Bible to put there. I am not going to present all ancient cultures based on just Vedics, but I mean, again, you need to go a little bit into the past, maybe to understand or put some words, some light in this kind of phenomena. And again, you can go to Christian Birkeland, which is a scientist, very, very, reference from the Thunderbolt project guys, trying to recreate electrical fields from, in a lab from recreated auroras and, the Jupiter, Saturn, Saturn rings, but everything with electricity.
Right.
and not
little rocks, not little rock moons flying around.
No,
there?
man,
Oh, man,
no
that's
little
amazing.
rocks. They put this metal ball. They create this type of electricity rings. And again, when we observe Saturn, for example, from here, even NASA, nobody can show you tiny rocks orbiting in this perfect harmonic circuit.
They can with their animations.
The only ones.
Yes, that's all they have.
The only ones. Again, this is just a comparison from electrical fields with the electrical flares, for me, of the sun. And again, you're going to have much, with electrical things to compare rather than, this explosion of...
What is that on the top left? What is that, Bob? Those two wick-like things. Do you know what that is? Yeah, what's that?
I have no idea what those are.
That's weird.
That's just a cable. That's a cable inside of a ceramic insulator, it looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that it is.
But what is it being used for, I guess?
No, but I mean, it's just crazy when you think of the
electric
way that
arcs, for creating electric arcs.
Right. And
okay. Well, then it's pretty self-explanatory. Sorry, I misunderstood you.
No, I just think it's amazing, and he showed it earlier, like the two electrical towers on Earth, technically sending things up to the ionosphere and back down. But you see something like that arc, it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Well, that is a very nice comparison. Let me just bring again that video, because here you have, this one you talk about. This is a special video from Explain.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
The propagation of electrical wave, but also applying to earthquakes. How you can produce earthquakes with, VH, this kind of electrical waves. And I mean, for communications, there is they have all the ground propagation wave, the sky propagation wave, the ionosphere bounds, and on top of that, if you want to, you can apply all the new technologies that it's based on, drones and stratospheric balloons, zeppelins, all that kind of thing. So this is the type of things that you can do. And then this is very old documentary. So if you extrapolate to our days, they have total control of the ionosphere. And in fact, at the end of this, I'm not going to play because I didn't finish to see completely, but at the end of this video, they show, let me just go in here very quickly. This, let me just play. I'm gonna play randomly, but for explain this. And this is based on reality. I mean, this is not. They can create a mirror from the ground, also to bounce, a static in the atmosphere, not just something that is. Let me go forward to the guy who is going to explain.
Science behind the technology ultimately leverages from nature, from something called the
can barely hear him.
Oh, sorry for that. This is my Windows and Skype. Sorry, guys. I cannot go and put more sound on this. Sorry. Well, I'm gonna leave for another presentation. But the guy talks about how they, with the laser, they can hit the ionosphere and create a static patch and bounce signals.
Oh, yeah. We've talked about that several times before, where they actually heat the sodium layer, the ionosphere, for creating artificial stars so that they can modulate out atmospheric distortion, which I find fascinating. And I still, the fact that they can even do that, that there's something that is static up there that they can literally concentrate a beam of focused laser light on, and it will have a sustain on it where it literally will maintain that charge and stay lit at a certain brightness or magnitude is astounding to me.
Sounds very domish to me.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? I mean, because it just doesn't make any sense. Otherwise, that to me is incredible.
Yeah. So that is why I sorry, because the sound it's terrible. I know that it's very low. So again, going back, also even with magnet, because with magnet, if you have a medium, you can quote unquote bend light.
Mm-hmm.
Not in terms, because light, again, it's a particle, is a wave. Again, if you have a medium, you have a perturbation of that medium, you can charge that medium, and with magnet, you can create arcs. Trying to referring to the sun, that this type of...
how the magnets can actually bend the properties of light. Also, when you can get it, then you go from there into the Faraday effect, which is a bending, through a rotational property. There's so much more going on up in the atmosphere than what they tell us. These clowns want us to believe, except for the case of a selenelian eclipse, they want us to believe that light enters and enters the atmosphere and comes in 100% straight, a la the Aristophanes experiment, which is nonsense. But then all of a sudden, all the rules change when it comes to describing a selenelian eclipse, right? Then it's a different story. But it's just crazy, their nonsense that they use. So anyway.
Yeah. And again, if you go, for example, to the moon and trying to study its surface, at least in the lab with electricity discharges, you can, recreate all type of the craters that we see. And of course, in the so-called standard model of based on asteroid impact, that nobody ever see that, of course, because we are not in the 4.5 million years away to observe the creation of the moon. But again, there is so many type of crater that does have any sense being a meteor impact. And these guys, at least, they present a theory based on observation and experiment in the lab and control environment, that where you can recreate those impossible things to recreate based on an impact. And also you can see a lot of trails of electricity creation, this idea of Zeus being the god of the lighting, creating the world in so many phenomena on nature, like a river, for example. And the mountains, valleys, collines, you can see in so many ways that it's more based on electricity than just a random speck flying around some orbital gravitational field that start to accumulate dust into our world.
Yep, but Professor Dave says, nuh-uh. That guy's such an idiot.
Even this type of observation that you can, for example, this was 21 of January, that you see this tiny, rapidly, light striking the moon. So, and after that, maybe it creates a new crater. And supposedly nobody, even NASA, warning us of that near Earth asteroid that hit the moon. What you see? What you see is just like a discharge of the moon, in the moon. You don't see a rock, you don't see dust flying away, you don't see nothing.
No. And, it would even be somewhat plausible, except for one thing, the moon that faces the side of the Earth, the side of the moon that faces the Earth constantly. How do the meteorites come around, swing around, get in between the moon and the Earth, and then come in and hit it absolutely straight on? It's like, I don't think so.
No, and everything is hit perpendicular to the surface.
Yeah.
Like the electrical field can prove, So, and again, even they talk about discharge experiments where the discharge create like tiny balls of matter from the air. And again, when you see, for example, what they call asteroid of meteor enter into our Earth, it's more like being some kind of discharge, even because when you analyze, and I showed this so many times before, but when you analyze this and look at the tendrils around the globe. This is what it's supposedly what it is the rock that explode and leave all tiny rocks in the type of circular gradient spread fashion. This is it's more like electrical tendrils than something that
exactly
is based on rocks.
Yep.
Look at that. What is this? Thousands of rocks, going crazy now. I mean,
no, that's clearly an electrical discharge.
Yes. And again, you can recreate the colors based on the interaction with different gases and different materials, the triboluminescence. Science can explain and recreate all those colors, of course, based on electrical charges. No, because a rock came into our atmosphere and things like that. We have this type of comparison between which we can observe in the lab. This is observing the lab, and this is observing the real nature, that the blue part is the Earth and the red part is the cosmos. And remember, cosmos means order. That is all about, is order. And it's like in the space, we have order, constantly order, this precise clock mechanism that ever change. And here on ground, maybe we have some chaos created from a few people, right?
Yeah, it's amazing how the biggest explosion ever known in creation is so orderly. It's just amazing.
It's amazing. It's amazing. We have companies like Star Alley that you can buy with for $10,000 a meteor shower in your backyard. So we have all this technology. We have all these, let me just play a clip because a few people talks about the global lighting. They all the time they assume that there is like a meteor strike, but nobody talks about global lighting. I put subtitles because the first part is in Spanish, so let me just play it.
El rayo globular es un fenómeno atmosférico muy escurridizo y cuyo origen todavía no ha sido aclarado. En este sentido es de la familia de los spritz o duendes de las tormentas. Durante años se pensó que era una invención de quienes aseguraban haberlo visto. Hubo que esperar hasta disponer de una evidencia clara para tomárselo en serio.
Lo que veremos es un rayo en forma esférica. Aparecen y se mueven en ocasiones muy lentamente, en ocasiones muy rápidamente. Se suelen presentar en colores cálidos, sobre todo en color naranja, pero también aparecen en colores fríos. Y luego, tras esto, desaparecen con una explosión bastante significativa que deja un olor como a azufre, a huevos podridos.
And then we observe, this type of meteor that
that's my favorite.
Spin in the but supposedly, like we showed before, then you have NASA guys going into the Congress and trying to sell a program to avoid meteors because they can strike us and destroy everything, like the last one in Russia and that kind of thing. And then we have, of course, all this technology that it's used by militaries and other experiments that there are, just regular equipment. I don't know exactly what they are. There is a different things. Some things are
found all over the place.
Missiles, and who knows what they are exactly. But again, you cannot assume that everything you see in the sky is based on the heliocentric model and things like that. And if you go to the theory behind the creation based on electricity, you can achieve from the cellular scale to giant scale everything that we observe. Just mirror in nature. You can create, of course, you can explain earthquakes with the electrical model. This is a tiny short video from Thunderbolt project inducing electrical currents into this shard with sand, and when it hit the surface, it's not just in the surface that it's spreading this electrical field, it's also underneath. That is why suddenly start to create other craters or other type of movement in the ground. This is what I mean. This is another camera from the same experiment. So we don't know what it's coming from underneath of the Earth and how we interact that.
We would never see
and
it.
again,
Yeah.
No, and again, if you compare this with the Shirashantra type of concept, you have all these envelope of the electrical fields going up to the plane of existence, but also from underneath to the plane of existence. So again, then is maybe why a lot of people talks about the machines of Nikola Tesla being used, like HARP or other technologies used to, to disturb our world, and let me just finish. The moon, for example, the light on the moon, for me, it's more like an interaction between the sun and the moon itself, but based on electricity, again. It's my opinion. And then the moon, for me, the moon match, at least in the 90% of the observations that I made, match the orientation of the sun. But when it came the full moon, that it's another thing. And we see this type of self-illuminated celestial body, without any type of dissipation of the light. It's very strange. I mean, I cannot conclude anything, but who knows what's going on up there? I mean,
it's amazing.
And just for close the presentation, the tides that I talking about before, again, if you have magnets or an electrical field, you can disturb water because water is diamagnetic. And so again, we have this movement up in the sky. We have the moon, we have the sun, we have the stars, the planet, everything that's moved in this clock fashion. And of course, if you have ether, if you have something that connects the cosmos with the ground, you can explain. At least you can explain or present an alternative model, because the gravity of the moon pulling the the oceans, right. It's insane. For me, that's my opinion. Of course, I don't want to convince anybody, but
yeah, magnetically it makes so much more sense than some sort of gravitational pull. And we've talked about it before. If you put a box or any kind of string hanging from the box and tried to put a camera in there and test it when it was high tide, low tide, or when the moon's close or far, it's not going to be pulling at all, that string. So it's certainly not pulling all those molecules of water.
Exactly. Then, for example, and then if you go, for example, to a lab and trying to use this circular tank, one is still and the other one is rotating. So the ones what is rotating, of course, all the fluids is going to concentrate in the middle. Mm-hmm. But the one who which is stationary, you can model the type of cyclones and tornadoes that we have in our own world. So again, we have,
that's proof positive right there. I mean, this is one of the most devastating demonstrations I think you've ever shown, Iru, that absolutely kills the globe model.
You cannot recreate what we observe in nature based on a rotated model.
Exactly.
You cannot. Then you have, I really miss this guy, Brian Mullin, explained the difference between the altitudes in terms of all the atmosphere moving together. I am not going to leave because I assume that, we have been seeing this explanation. Then you have, for example, if you have a central neodymium magnet in a liquid, you can have both these clusters of it's like a nanogas particle. You can do rotated clockwise and anti-clockwise. All you need is a center, a magnetic center. and you can have both directions in terms of the rotations. So what I'm trying to show here is, because we have, cyclones in the so-called south hemisphere and in the north hemisphere going in different direction, that doesn't imply that you live in a spherical ball rotating.
No, it doesn't even make any sense, honestly. To have the hurricane spinning like that on a ball, and to have such a very sharp bifurcation point right at the equator where they would just spin in opposite directions, that also doesn't make any sense in the ball model. But it certainly does when you consider the electromagnetic and electrostatic effects that the sun and potentially even the moon might have on the atmosphere below us. As they pass through, they cause a wake of counter-opposing rotational forces. And I think, to me, that makes a whole lot more sense than the completely nonsensical spinning ball, which, like I said, right on the equator line, how you have that perfect bifurcation, that's absurd. There's nothing about that makes any sense at all.
No, and in fact, even I show different models based on water, fluid, metal, changing the currents, the electrical currents. It changed direction, but also with the magnet in the middle, and also with light. I mean, a magnet interacting with fields that can hold light, you're always going to have this clockwise and anti-clockwise based on the magnetic field. I mean, again, you have a lot more variety of explanation based, like the guy that creates a sun in a jar, saying the universe is magnetic and light instead of a gravitational driven.
Not gravitationally driven.
And that spinning magnetic field or light field is the Faraday effect, and it's very, very real.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Then you have the sprites, and something that is remarkable is that it's produced from 100 kilometers down. I mean, it's this barrier here. It's like the gases that we talked early. It's constrain the electrical fields, because the gas, like the hexafluoride, it's not allowed to be electrical, to have electrical fields, or I don't know, but there is a limit up there. Sorry for my short explanation, but we have this limit for so many things that we can observe, and we have this type of interaction between the ground and the sky, and again, we can reference everything happened inside of this 120 kilometers, the Karma line. It's like everything happened inside there. Let me just reset the PowerPoint, or let me see. No, I'm here. Again, for example, electrical path. I just playing this type of videos to show the idea behind this interaction between the ground and the sky, and different scales, and different types. And when you go to this is the type of thing that I'm talking about. And even and with this, I close the presentation. Even in the ancient cultures, they have this type of reference to electrical interaction or electrical beams. Someone said that this type of images are referring for plasma discharge, and the sprite that we mentioned, a sprite is like talking about spirits. That is the translation of the word sprite. It's like calling the skies, the spirit from the sky. And you have also in the Egyptian culture, you have all these pillars that a lot of people believe that there are references to secrecy. Again, what is the word for divine geometry?
Sacred geometry.
Yeah, sacred geometry.
And those are what, Jed pillars? Yeah, Jed pillars.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
So you cannot leave this to apart if you want to maybe trying to understand a little bit what's going on, because maybe in the past, maybe it was a reset in terms of our world in the past. I don't know. Again,
it's interesting that they say that about sprites and being spirits, because that kind of goes right along with the idea that stars are souls, right? Very interesting.
Yes, yeah. And in fact, I really like this tiny game, because if I present this image here and I ask you what time is it, what do you say?
It's now.
It's now. It's a daylight, but it's not. It's night, and that is the light produced by the lighting. So if that is produced by electrical lighting, of course our sun,
Yeah, this is Matrix Decode shot of the lightning strike. And he caught it right as it struck. Which, I used this on Globebusters a couple of years ago. Talking about, this is actually what's going on is the intense electrostatic field by that lightning strike is illuminating the gases, the xenon gases, the noble gases. There you go. That's what I wanted. The noble gases in the atmosphere, and thus lighting it all up.
Yeah, and everything is electric. I mean, if you put a plant with the lamp, electrical lamp is going to grow. If you put beside this fire, it's going to die. I mean, we are fed by electrical fields, no doubt about it. All the organisms are electrical driven.
Yeah, that's when people really need to think about that. Go ahead and put a fire next to your plant and see how well it grows.
How grows?
It's not going to grow.
I don't think so.
In fact, it's going to die.
I don't. Yeah, I believe that. Yes. Sorry. Why I opened that. And even I trying to find the Ernest Mach talking about and I believe it's in Spanish, unfortunately. But here I have then I'm going to translate. But here Ernest Mach talk about, for example, he was against the heliocentric model. I don't know if you know that. The guy who create the equation from the speed of the sound, speed of sound.
Well, yeah, he thought we were the center for sure.
Yes, and he talks about that if we have a very big mass referencing to the stars circling above us, the focal pendulum is going to work.
The what pendulum?
Focult.
Yeah.
I swear to God, it sounded like you said the "fuck you" pendulum.
Might as well be that.
Because,
all right, we have a new one. We have a new Eroism, guys. The "fuck you" pendulum.
The fucking pendulum. No. I never said that, and it's on record. Okay, it's on record.
Okay, all right.
No, I know there isn't Spanish, but he talks about, because at that time he trying to debunk the focal pendulum. So he talks about the dynamic and the oscillations created by the mass. If there is an ether, and you have this ether connect all the movement from the sky to the ground, you're gonna have the same explanation for a lot of things that we presume it's only because we live in a heliocentric model. The Coriolis effects, for example, in this case.
Yeah.
He talks about that. If you have the mass of the stars and the sun and the planet and the moon circling above us, you have the same result.
Right. He said all masses, all motion, indeed all forces are relative. There is no way to discern relative from absolute motion when we encounter them. Whenever modern writers infer an imaginary distinction between relative and absolute motion from a Newtonian framework, they do not stop to think that both the Ptolemaic and Copernican systems are both equally true and always will be. They can't. There's no difference.
Yeah.
Now, speaking as the only person in the world that has ever proven Earth rotation, I have to take exception with that.
Sorry.
And again, for example, this came from a physicist. He lives in Spain, talking about they call ARA, the anomaly of the revolution, atmospheric revolution, which is the same kind of explanation that Brian Mullins said. I mean, if we live in a sphere, rotating and all the atmosphere go together, we must have winds of 3,000 kilometers per hour. I mean, there is a lot of inconsistency in the heliocentric model. The vacuum versus
Do you want
the atmosphere is another one. And
do you want the exact quote from Ernst Mach? I did find it. So he says, obviously it doesn't matter if we think the Earth is turning around its axis or at rest while the fixed stars revolve around it. Geometrically, these are the exact same. It's the same case of relative rotation of the Earth and the fixed stars with respect to one another. But if we think of the Earth at rest and the fixed stars revolving around it, then there is no flattening of Earth, no Foucault's experiment, and so on. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So this is all, guys.
And by flattening of the Earth, he means the stupid assertion that the globe is being squished. Sorry, like Newton said, there's flat.
Yeah,
top,
the Lorentz
flat
contraction,
it's
the
like
squishing.
The squishing, the flat top and the flat bottom. It's kind of
flat on
top.
Okay.
Yeah,
that would be the centrifugal forces squishing the globe and bulging the sides and bringing the top and the bottom down. Yeah, that's about ridiculous too.
Right. And he's just pointing that out. Go ahead, Iro. Sorry.
No, and that's all, man. I mean,
that's all.
That's all. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome, Iro, and it's a great presentation. I'm not sure how anyone at this point can disagree that the Earth and so-called universe is electrically driven, electromagnetic in nature. Not based on some fantasy pull nature of mass, not based on the bending of some non-existent fabric of space-time. And it's sad that it's just another thing that we've been lied to about, and you have to find on your own because science isn't going to admit such a big error as that one. They're just not going to do it.
Yeah, I said at the beginning in the first presentation, this is not going to be like a mathematical presentation trying to present information based on math and equation and that kind of things. It's more like a compilation of information, experiment, observations, interpretations of my own, and just make it like a holistic presentation. Of course, and sorry for saying again, but this in Spanish maybe I elaborate a little more in each topic. I don't have the vocabulary necessarily to extend in my explanation, and maybe sometimes my explanations are a little strange to understand, but I encourage everyone to make his own research and trying to get into the electrical universe. We have a lot of information up there. Some ones are based on heliocentric model or the Big Bang theory. Doesn't matter. Just make your own way, trying to at least inform with alternative sources.
Exactly. Well said. And, Iro, I think you did a really good job explaining it. And, hopefully every once in a while, Jaron and I can jump in and kind of reinterpret what you're saying. But I think overall you did a fantastic job of getting the message across. And, even if people only understood a small portion of what you were saying, it's pretty obvious that, the things that you did present pretty clearly debunk this gravitational based universe. And it just makes a lot more sense that it's electrical based, right? Unless you have no common sense like Professor Dave, this makes a whole lot of sense. It really does. It fits in, to the heliocentric paradigm much better, and even in the flat Earth paradigm to a large degree, with some minor changes, in our particular cosmology that we describe, living under this dome. But overall, I think you did a great job. I really do.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me, give me the opportunity, Jaron, to make these
always, anytime.
Presentations.
I think next time you and I need to do something on NASA fakery, whether it's, I don't know, taking it back and doing one decade at a time, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, however you want to do it.
Oh, that will be nice. That will be nice. Yes,
be good.
I have a lot of that.
It'd be a good series to do that. So we'll be doing that. And if anybody's interested in presenting something, you can always reach out on Skype, search Jeranism Truth, and pass me some sort of presentation or PowerPoint. I'll take a look. I think we do have a couple people who wanted to do something I got to look at a little closer. We got a couple super chats I didn't get to during the show. Trout Whisperer says, excellent presentations, Iru. Thank you. We have Daniel Hobbs says, thanks for all that you do. Richard Warren, thank you very much for the super chat. Alex Stein. Hendrik Olertz, who's been a great a friend of the show and friend of Iru's for a long time. He's a supporter of
Thank you.
Glowbusters. Me, Iru's a good guy. Wake the Sheeple says off topic, but almost all gun models and calibers equal 911, 13, etc. Gematria, Colt 1911, SIG P938, P238, 30.6, AK-47, etc. Keep up the great work. I've never thought about that.
That's interesting. I never knew that either. Wow. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I'll have to I gotta think about that one. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm looking at the things that's on the screen, and I'm like, okay, that is generally correct. We'll have to see what else it is, but great point. Love to hear stuff like that. Some gravy, as you might want to call it. And okay, I think that's pretty much it. So, Iru, are you gonna be here tomorrow for a little lounge?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So we'll be
Like
able
always.
to look at some stuff and talk about Trunk and his fast
Trunk?
pushing these. Yeah, Trunk.
Trunk.
So
I'm stop sharing right now.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's just funny. Owen Benjamin played some video of some black lady going off on Trump, and for some reason she kept calling him Trunk, and it's just kind of stuck. It's kind of funny. Trunk. Anyway, so that was part 2 of Electric Universe with Iru. We'll be doing a lounge tomorrow, so tune in. That'll be at 12 noon Pacific. Then we've got Glowbusters coming up on Sunday. Again, look for us. We'll either put out a community post if we're not going to be able to go live, but I'm hoping we'll be able to. Little talk on 5G. We've got, of course, Monday coming up raw, and then we do it all over again. So also check out Veritas TV is the channel. I'll probably load it. I'm going to give it a day or so on his channel before I put it on mine. So you'll have to check it out unless you want to wait for it to come out on my channel. Give it a couple days, and I'll probably put it out on my channel. So, Bob, any final words before we head out? Or
Nope. I think that pretty much covers it for today. We'll probably see you guys tomorrow and Sunday for sure.
Okay, we all have Patreon accounts if you want to be a patron and help support those shows you like so they don't go away. Mine's easy to find, patreon.com/jeranism. We also have patreon.com/globebusters. And Iru has his at patreon.com/nur para todos. All his links are in the description. Iru, anything else I'm missing about your support options?
No, and npt.redpill is my English channel. I have all the links to the, if you want to support me, I really appreciate it. But that's all. Thank you.
Okay, great. And if you want to, and like I said, all those links to his English and Spanish channel are in the description. If you want to mail me something, you can do that. P.O. Box 3044, Merced, California, 95344. I don't need any other masks. I've now received 2 masks. Stop sending me masks. I'm not going to wear them. They just are just, I'm actually looking at them hanging on my wall. One does say flatten the curve. That's pretty cool. The other one is not as cool. Anyway, don't send me any more masks. I'm not going to wear them. All right, guys, it's been fun. We'll talk more tomorrow. We'll take a look at some, cops speaking out. I don't know. There's some other stuff going around. But that's about it. So I remind you guys to do your own research, because when you do, you'll never again believe what you've been taught. This has been Jaren with Iru and Bob, the Electric Universe, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time, this has been Jeranism. Peace.
Peace.